My name is Kenneth Lukwagandason, your host, and today we'll be continuing the spotlight on the happenings on the political terrain, looking at what is happening in the FDC party, but also hearing the views of our guests about the proposed electoral reforms. We know yesterday they were introduced in cabinet, and the major highlights include return of term limits, parliament to elect a president, term limits for women MPs, and some talk about reducing the size of parliament therein. And we'll be looking at those details to hear the views of this particular guest who is going to join us on the line. About the FDC party, we know the split that happened between the Katonga and Najja Nkumbi group. Each side seems to be now focusing on their issues. We know the Katonga faction has had issues with the Electoral Commission, and they have given the Electoral Commission a one-week ultimatum to have their political party registered. They had issues with the colors and also the name of that particular political party group, and they have actually told us that they expect that by Monday next week, the Electoral Commission will have gotten back to them, and then their main point is that they need the necessary documents to get out there and register another political party. Well, the Najja Nkumbi side seems to be going ahead with their activities, and we saw the Electoral Commission sort of certifying them as the rightful leaders of the political party after a list of names that they submitted to them were validated by the Electoral Commission, and they came back as the leaders of the political party. And of course, in Najja Nkumbi, we know the group is led by Honorable Patrick Amuriat Oboy, Engineer Amuriat Oboy, who became the president, replacing Gregory Mugisha Muntu, who left the party to form the Alliance for National Transformation Party. So we'll be looking at some of those issues in details with this particular guest who is going to join us on the line, and that is none other than the Honorable Patrick Amuriat Oboy, who is going to join us on the line from Teso sub-region where he is. In the meantime, as we wait for him to actually come in, you can be part of this show by sharing your views with us via the WhatsApp line, which is 0703 090 090. Also, you can tell us where you're listening from and give us a comment about what we are going to discuss today. But also, in a short while, I'll be opening the phone lines for you to actually call in and contribute to this discussion. Our guest this evening is going to be the Honorable Patrick Amuriat Oboy, who is the president of the Forum for Democratic Change, FDC, who is joining us on the line to share his perspective on the different issues that are happening in our country, proposed electoral reforms, constitutional and electoral reforms, but also the issue of the FDC party and how it's faring ahead of the 2026 general elections. Now, on the electoral reforms, we know very well that Honorable Norbert Mao, the Justice and Constitutional Affairs Minister, did present them to cabinet yesterday. They want to see term limits returned, but there's a possibility that Parliament will be electing the next president. That's if the MPs in Parliament actually accept that particular proposal. What does that mean? It means that there will be no universal adult suffrage voting for the president. It will mean that a political party that garners the majority seats in Parliament will automatically form the next government. And Honorable Amuriat Oboy now joins us on the line all the way from Teso. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, Honorable Patrick Amuriat Oboy.
Good evening, Kenneth, and good evening to all the listeners out there. It's always a great pleasure being on Radio 1 90.0.
How is the situation in Teso? How are things going on that side?
Well, Teso at the moment is a bit hot. It's some kind of dry spell that is passing, and the farmers are beginning to get worried Otherwise, it is peaceful. Of course, people continue to worry about how they will pay back PDM, the parish development model, which I think is a program bound to fail, because I think the ambition of the government to give grants to an impoverished population was misfiring. It should not have been a loan, it should have been a grant. And so many people are grappling, especially with taking their children back to school, and already we are finding that the turn-up for the beginning of term is very, very low, especially in schools where parents have to pay. So, coupled with the poverty levels, I think it's going to be a very difficult term for most parents.
All right. Here in Kampala, there is an ongoing debate about the proposed electoral reforms, constitutional and electoral reforms. Let's begin from the onset. You are somebody who participated in the past election, but also in numerous elections in the past. Do you think we need constitutional and electoral reforms to address some issues that you might have come across?
Yes, indeed. We have always been pushing for electoral reforms, particularly reforms that could bring change in the management of the elections itself, because we know that from election to election there's been rigging. Clearly, the regime has taken advantage of the situation, and so we've always called for reforms, and this has been going on for the last 20 years. But unfortunately, every time that a proposal for reforms is brought, the government in power is feigning a lack of time. I do remember one time when the Right Honorable Amama Mbabazi was still Prime Minister, the Citizens Compact was discussed, consultations took place across the country, and unfortunately, this just fell through. And somehow even some form of victimization against those who were organizing and pushing, notably Dr. Kaiso, suffered a lot of torment at that period of time, because he was working for the Interreligious Council of Uganda, which was deeply involved in proposing reforms to make elections, sanitize elections, and to make them free, fair, and credible. Unfortunately, the regime was not interested in this, and therefore they kept dilly-dallying about it, and at the end of the day, the reforms never saw the light of day.
So let's look at some of the things that you think need to change. In your view, having participated in these elections, what are some of the things that you think need to be addressed comprehensively for us to have a process that is acceptable, a process that meets the standards that you think are desirous of an election in a setting like ours?
We'd like to talk about the removal of violence in the elections. We would like to see an electoral commission that is neutral. And by this, we believe that the appointment of the electoral commission should consider the interests of other political parties other than the political party in power. As it stands now, the electoral commission is appointed by Mr. Museveni, who is bound to be a competitor in the next election, and probably in the election of 2031. And you see, he's going to put his own people there. They are going to favor him because they know that the person who has paid the piper calls the tune. And so for us, we think that we need an overhaul of the Electoral Commission to take into consideration neutrality of the individuals, key players who are actually going to be responsible for the elections, and demilitarization of the elections. We also think that a representation in the House would have to reduce so much in as far as the interest groups are concerned. For example, the army, is just sitting there. There's no one time that I've heard them articulating for the common military person who have got their own issues, whose plight need to be elevated. And so really the composition of parliament needs to be reviewed to be able to manage parliament in as far as the size of our economy is concerned, and also the needs of the population, and also considering, the number of people from the recently concluded census. So really a lot of things need to be discussed. And of course, we as the FDC, we've also been pushing for proportional representation because we have a feeling that under the current system, whichever way the election is conducted, and we know that the election have always been rigged, there is no fairness. You find that the party in power today, the NRM, that is in government, takes it all. We have a house that is skewed so much in favor of the ruling party. Now, we wanted a leaf to be borrowed from the South African system, where depending on the score that presidential candidates obtained, they would then be represented in those proportions in the House. And if this was done, then we would be able to have a fairly balanced legislature, and something that the ruling party would have to pay attention to, because then with increased numbers in the opposition, they would have a stronger voice in the House.
All right,
what is happening today is completely, in favor of the NRM, and they can do anything with whatever bill comes in the House. They can take decisions, and most times they have done that in accordance with the whims of the governor, the current head of state.
All right, let me guide you through some of these key issues that you've put across, and I'll begin with the issue of removal of violence from the election process. The reason I'm focusing on this, it's something that has been widely reported on. Almost each and every election we have violence happening. It will be very important for the public or the powers that be to hear your view on how you think violence can be ended. How can we deal with this problem of violence from the election process?
Well, remove the police from direct involvement in policing the elections.
Remove the police?
The current law.
Remove the police?
Law,
if we...
the current...
Yes, go ahead.
Under the current law, we expect that 2 constables will be posted in the polling stations, which is happening. But what happens outside the polling stations is something that is an eyesore to our elections. And many will bear me witness. I've been a victim of this in the last election. In the 65 days, arrested 45 times, sometimes twice in a day, with cases all over the country. Those are political cases that I have got to attend to. And, it's very evident that the role of the army in the elections is there. And, they come and they stand on one side against the citizens of this country. And I'll just give you my experience in 2016. When I ran to become member of parliament, Charles Rangina, flew a military helicopter, intimidating everybody in my district. Came to a rally of my opponents, properly dressed up in military fatigue, and threatened the population and told them if they voted for me, they would be in hot soup. And this a person facilitated with a military helicopter flying from district, from Serere to Kumi, from Kumi to the other parts of Teso, with the view of intimidating people who are armless. They do this. They have no threat to the population. They cannot influence the election. They just have one vote. But you will find that our friends in the military get involved. And this worries me because just recently, while some military officers were being retired, I took note of what the deputy commander of the army saying to them, said, you know, the election is not going to be easy. You are going to have to play a role in the coming elections. Don't think you are just going to sit back. Now, if the deputy commander of the army is going to say this is an instruction to these people that they will be called back and they will participate in the elections. How else would they participate in the election other than interfering with elections? So I think that the regime needs to come out very clear on this. They need to assure the population, you know, there has got to be a restriction on what the military can do and what they cannot do. Otherwise, if this is not considered as one of the reforms and expressed unequivocally, we are headed for trouble. In this country, we will never have a free, fair, and credible election.
All right. Next up, maybe let's look at the issue of the Electoral Commission. You know, there's been a debate around the Electoral Commission for quite some time about how they are appointed. But the recent comments by President Yoweri Museveni that your colleagues NUP rigged the elections by 1 million shillings has also invited further criticism about the EC, and some people are saying the statements of the president cause what you would call a lack of credibility in the Electoral Commission. But you propose that the opposition should also be, included in the composition of the Electoral Commission. But someone will say, where have you seen that?
Well, I think that maybe really to modify my statements is that, you know, you have people of impeccable records, and that proposals are given by the opposition as well as the ruling party, and from a basket of respectable individuals, men and women of stature, men and women of impeccable records, people who have served this nation without any controversy, that, you know, probably they would be chosen from that basket that we, from the opposition, nominate. And there is an opportunity for whoever selects them to select from a nominated group of people, you know, pool of individuals. As it turns out today, Mr. Museveni is just going to sit with these people. They are going to plot, and, you know, they will plot to bring in their own people. And these fellows do not serve the interests of the common Ugandan. They serve the interests of the ruling party. And therefore, you know, for the head of state of this country to say that NUP actually rigged up to 1 million votes, first of all, if this was true, that should be a vote of no confidence in the Electoral Commission. Instead of acting on the Electoral Commission, we have seen their term, for most of them whose term hadn't expired, who are eligible to go for another term, their terms have been renewed. And one wonders why that kind of contradiction. This is a paradox that needs to be explained by the author of this tale of rigging of elections. But, you know, to a common Ugandan, it's really laughable that Mr. Museveni would even suggest that our brothers and sisters of the NUP rigged. And if they surely rigged, what action did he take against this so that it stopped once and for all? I didn't see him contesting at the time he was announced, the winner of the elections. Instead, he went home, swore in. Even during his inauguration, nothing of that kind actually came out, and the statements are there on record. So I do feel that the procedure should be that every political party, or even, you know, groups of political parties, nominate credible people. They are put into a pool from which, you know, one is selected probably per grouping of political organizations. You could set up a criteria for these. Which political organization is going to propose? Probably you could look at representation in the previous parliament or you or the current parliament, and you can then say, okay, look, we would like you to bring a name. FDC bring a name, JEMA bring a name, and then these fellows are scrutinized, taken through the interviews, they go through the vetting in parliament, and they then go and represent us as a formidable force that will determine the future of the elections in this country.
All right, Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. My guest this evening is the Honorable Patrick Amuriat, the FDC President. Focus is on electoral and constitutional reforms, but we also have an opportunity to look at the situation in the FDC following a number of issues that have arisen recently. Now, very quickly, let me get your reaction on the proposals as put forward by Honorable Norbert Mao. I'm sure you've seen those. What's your quick take on them?
Well, I think that what Norbert Mao is doing is to create a situation that actually the NRM is serious with the electoral reforms. And, the whole thing has been spiced up because, Norbert Mao, I know he's a very cunning person because we've grown up together. We went to university at the same time, participated in politics at university level, came out and participated in national politics. Were in the same parliament at a certain point in time. And I know how cheeky he can be when he wants to get something done. What he has proposed, proportional representation, is something he knows the opposition is going to fall for. He's also proposed the restoration of term limits. He believes that, this is something that we've always been talking about and we have advocated for. And then, then he brings the chaff and brings it in there, you see, to entice us, to these two being a bait for us to fall for. And then he's there saying, the president, we go to a presidential, a parliamentary system where the president is elected by parliament, thereby, disenfranchising the population of Ugandans, not helping them to determine the kind of person who is going to lead them as president. He already begins to take us in troubled waters when he gets to that stage. I think really most of the proposals, other than the two that I have cited, are really not very good for this country. But the kind of person that he is, and also probably under the instruction of Mr. Museveni, he would like us to fall for this, and he has set a trap for us as members of the opposition. And therefore, I think that the intention is not really to bring back term limits or to change the system so that we have a proportional representation in our constitution. The whole idea is to have a bill full of such things, and then, those that are pro-opposition people will be thrown out one after the other. And I think that for starters, and some of the listeners listening at the moment, we need to know about the legislative processes. Not everything that is brought as a bill will pass through. When it gets to the second reading where a bill is scrutinized, there is a possibility that given the skewed nature of the current parliament, that some of the proposals in the bill will be thrown out. And two of those proposals that I suspect will be thrown out, immediately the second and third reading is done, will be this very pro-people proposals that Honorable Mao is using as a bait against maybe an opposition that is gullible.
All right.
I would like to assure listeners that the FDC is fully awake to these tricks and that we are not going to fall for any of those.
All right. I've sensed some contradiction in what you have actually said, but I'll get back to you when we return from this break. Dear listeners, stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. We're going for a break. When we return, we'll continue hearing from Engineer Patrick Amuriat, who is submitting his views here about constitution and electoral reforms. But also in the next segment, we'll be looking at how FDC is shaping up ahead of the 2026 general election. Now, stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90, but keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line 0703 090 090. Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. My guest this evening is the Honorable Engineer Patrick Amuriat, and he's sharing his perspectives on some of the key developments on the political scene. We are looking at the issues of constitutional and electoral reforms, but also we'll be looking at how FDC is shaping up ahead of the 2026 general elections. Now, Honorable Amuriat, I hope you're still with us on the line.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, you did talk about how we can borrow an example from South Africa for proportional representation, which is a parliamentary system. And now I hear you again saying that the proposal being brought by Mao, which is in the same direction, will be removing the power of Ugandans to actually elect their leader. Why then are you suddenly switching?
Well, I think, if whatever has appeared in the media is something to go by, you cannot have a proportional representation as well as a parliamentary system. And so maybe that question should really go to Norbert Mao, because you have to have either of the two. You can't have both of them. And so if he is proposing a parliamentary system, then you cannot have a system of proportional representation. Otherwise, you are going to have a completely distorted system to deal with. The proportional representation entails a party sponsoring a presidential candidate, and the presidential candidate goes the population together with his or her team, canvasses votes, and once they score a certain percentage, it is that percentage that they go with to parliament based on a list that is provided by that political organization. On the other hand, if you would like to have a parliamentary system, the president per se does not go out to campaign for himself or herself. Instead, this is going to be given to the members of parliament. And depending on the majority member, the party that scores the majority members of parliament, numbers of members of parliament, then they will be eligible to elect the president of the country. So I think that I have not read the bill. Probably what we are reading is speculation from the media. I think that if it is ready, then it should be made public to all of us so that we critique the bill while understanding what exactly is contained in the bill and not use media speculation.
All right. Let's now shift the gears and look at the state of your political party as we go into the next elections. Engineer Patrick Amuriat. Of course, people are familiar with what has been happening in the FDC, and we don't know what could be going on as you prepare for the next elections, because there is talk that you're going to have a political base, most likely, where your supporters are divided. One side going with the Katonga group, and the other one sticking with Najana Nkumbi. How are you addressing this issue as a political party as you prepare for the next run of elections?
It has to be very, very clear, and we are categorical on this, that whoever decides to move out of the party has the liberty to do that. And I don't think that anybody can really, in politics, successfully serve two masters. So you either have got to be FDC or you are not FDC. And I think that using full authority, I can say authoritatively that we know where the leadership of the FDC resides. Very recently, this has been clarified by the Electoral Commission through a certified copy of the list of leaders that was filed as returns after the election of the 6th of October 2023 in the National Delegates Conference that took place at that time. And so we, as an identity, FDC can be identified with her leaders. we have also been carrying out digital registration across the country, as you are aware. And so we are compiling a list of members of the party. And I think here we have always been careful to distinguish between members of the party and supporters of the party. There has to be a distinction. I think that quite easily most political players have had a tendency to mix this up. You could be a sympathizer or a supporter of a political organization, but not be a member of that organization. What our digital registration has helped to do is to distinguish between the two. And this is why, although we've been criticized for charging a nominal fee for members to register, I think we will continue doing this registration as a fee. At a fee, we are not going to change these. And therefore, our friends sitting in Katonga have the liberty to form a political organization. We are not going to conflict in as far as this is concerned. Some of them who do not wish to belong to the other political organization are actually free to stand as independents. But in order to answer your question directly, we have spared no effort to ensure that our friends, some who may have been misled, who may have been given false hope, who may have dreamt that any political party can be formed out as an offshoot of from the FTC, and feel disappointed by the fact that maybe this is not really forthcoming, talks to and at liberty to return to the fold. So really, we are working to connect with that our members who may have been somehow disillusioned and decided to base their understanding of moving from the FDC on false information and wish to return will be welcome to come back to the party.
All right, and the Katonga group has hit a snag in their attempt to actually register a political party. I'm sure you're happy that they decided to move towards that direction. One of the things they have said is that the Electoral Commission is telling them that the colors they intend to use almost resemble the ones of the FDC. And people would like to know, are you the ones who have complained to the Electoral Commission that your colors are being used by the Katonga group?
First of all, I would not be very happy if somebody is trying to gain their freedom and their efforts are failed. I wouldn't be really happy about that. And so I don't think anybody in the leadership of the FDC is celebrating the inability of our friends from Katonga to register a political organization. Far from it, we would have loved them to free themselves so that the confusion that subsisted over the last 1 year and a half is put out. So there's nobody who sits in Katonga to take claim of a member or even owning the FTC. So we are disadvantaged by the inability of our friends to get registered, and how I wish they could sort themselves up, based on the advice of the Electoral Commission, so as quickly as possible they register, so that we know that Lukwago has was and that entire group, the Salam Musumbas, have gone and they are now our competitors rather than masqueraders. But believe that they belong to the FDC and have got over it and as leaders of the FDC, something that is extremely scandalous. So, as far as blue color is concerned, we never complained. We didn't want to complain. We believed that the Electoral Commission aligned to the fact that our color is sky blue. And, I have had yes, trying to confuse the public about the different shades of blue. I think we need to understand that our communities, most of our communities are basic, and that we, with no civic education, it is easy to confuse different shades of blue or any other color. And so, perhaps we didn't complain about somebody invading us, trying to cause confusion. And by the way, this too was deliberate, because I believe that these people have always wanted to transit with the FDC support. They have always wanted to confuse the public, and all that has been done over the last 1 year and a half has been mainly to try to take as much of the FDC membership as they can in order to take them to the next political party. It's a way of recruiting FDC into new political formation. Fortunately for us, and God being on our side, I think that this has also been discovered by other people who are not clear players in this conflict, but regulators. And so for me, that is not our business. We still have our blue. We are happy to have it, something that is registered. And I think that today I was listening to some comments in some top radio stations in the country. And it looks like there is confusion over the color that a party secures with the flag of the party. I will give you an example of the FDC. Our colors, our flag colors of the FDC are red, yellow, and green. And each of those colors has got a significance, something that was at the formation of the FDC. But the color, the official color that we use, as our identity, quick identity, is the blue color. And this is why you've seen us running around the country with these blue colors, clad in our blue colors, and being proud to be the blue people. So I think that nobody should blame the FDC. That is the funeral of our friend Tonga. The earlier they sort themselves out, the better it is.
All right.
And but we do not celebrate their misery.
All right.
Their success help us sanitize the FDC. So that would be very easy for us to distinguish between who subscribes to the new party and who has stayed within the FDC. There is going to be no way in between the two. If the new political organization is registered and people drift in the direction that they would like to belong.
All right, we have a couple of comments coming in from the listeners, but actually before we do that, earlier on we talked about the FDC and how it's preparing for the next elections, and if you follow what has been happening, there might actually be no FDC for 2026 because some party members, people who are still holding the party card, are actually in the process of winding up that political party. A notice has already been issued by Chairman Waswabirigwa to the effect that the FDC should be liquidated.
Well, I think the section of our constitution is about who has the authority to do this. And I think, this is a matter now that is a settled matter. Waswabirigwa and his group to have that authority. They are not the officials of this organization. By law provided. They are merely wishful thinkers. I have always called them that, fanators. And, you can't stop people making fun. If they want to continue making fun of themselves, they can do that. I would like to tell you, six months from now, the FCC will still be there unless we, who are in the leadership, so decided to dissolve it. And as leader of the FCC, I can assure the public that we do not have such intentions of doing it because we think that our party is still a robust party, is still useful, a struggle party, and that the mission of that party has not been accomplished.
All right.
Now, on the other hand, talking about our level of preparation, the things that we've done in the field during our rallies that we had 7 sub-regions of this country was recruitment-based and verification of candidates. And as a matter of fact, I have established a committee that is examining all the constituencies to see that we are able to get viable candidates across the country. And so it is a work in progress, and I would like to also inform the public that this work in progress will continue
all right
to our next National Council that is coming up for a month from now on the 17th of October this year.
All right, Honorable Patrick Amuriat Boy, I'm afraid we're running out of time, and I would like you to attend to the comments that are coming in from the listeners. So kindly take a listen and then respond. We have Benon Fred Twinamasko writes in and says, can POA confirm that he will be the presidential flag bearer for FDC, or will it be Honorable Nandala Mafabi, or are they actually going to hold party primaries? That's a comment there that comes in from Benon Fred Twinamasko. Then we have another comment coming in from another listener here who says, he says, allow me to comment on Honorable Mao's electoral reforms. One, whereas I partly agree with the restoration of term limits, it should cut across to all elective offices, not selectively targeting the president and special groups like women MPs. Two, Uganda is a growing democracy, and such there is lack of political maturity, yet the population is being deprived if there is no universal suffrage system, which is a constitutional and democratic right, and it will demotivate the voters for their selfish intended reasons. That's Kamugo Fred Keta listening in from Kira municipality. Well, we have another comment. I think Honorable Oboy is wrong on the proposed reforms being done away at the second reading. NRM MPs operate like a mobocracy, and the MPs will be summoned to State House or Chankwanzi to have them passed the proposed reforms. Honorable Boy should be knowing this, having been a politician in Uganda. That's George Murungi Nyakana listening in from Kasangati Town Council in Wakiso district. We have another comment. Who is now the national chairman, since the other one belongs to Katonga Group? That's a comment from David, who is listening to us from here in Kampala. And somebody writes in and said the major problem of FDC is lack of an agenda that appeals to the masses. Prophecies of doom like a prediction of tsunami didn't help the situation either. It was wrong approach that could not convince Ugandans that in investigate there is a better president than Museveni. FDC should be assessed looking at how it was formed and what aspirations it had during its inception. That's the only way we shall understand why FDC is growing weaker. That's a comment from Aine Richard, who is listening in from Bushenyi. Then we have another comment. Good evening, Radio 1. Honorable Mao's electoral reforms is a secret agreement between between him and President Museveni. Which term limits for Mao and Parliament? Well, there's a confusion in this comment. As for the FDC, let the Katonga Group of selfish people leave FDC to die, as they said. Why kill what they said it will die when they leave? That's a comment from Ongodia Joseph, who is listening in from here in Kampala.
Again, please.
Well, he says the Katonga Group should let FDC die like the way they suggested that it would die when they leave. That's Ongodia, who is listening in from here in Kampala. We have another comment. All those changes should be entrenched to avoid their recurrence. That when the reforms are carried out, effected by Parliament, they should be entrenched. Well, those are some of the comments that are coming in from the listeners. Honorable Patrick Amuriat Boy, if you can quickly respond to them, because time is moving very fast.
I would like to thank the various scholars, and really some of them do agree with me that the NRM is a mobocracy in Parliament. Yes, I have encountered this when they came all over us when the term limits were removed. You know, we're just 58 men and women standing out on the side of the people. The rest of it was bribery and mobocracy and, you know, threatening of the NRM. If they didn't support a position of the party, they would not return to Parliament. Unfortunately, for some of them, they have regretted it. Now, who would be our flag bearer? We have got many leaders. In fact, to talk about Power and Nandala, the two of us alone, is an insult to the FDC. We got many leaders, and we have got our own processes by which a flag bearer is elected. And so for us now, our preoccupation is to get along with recruitment and entrenching the party in the whole of the country, making it something attractive to the people. And then, when the presidential candidate comes, whoever it's going to be, they will enjoy the full support of the population who admire the policies and the objectives of the FDC and their proposals contained in the manifesto. We are going to issue a very strong manifesto, and this is not going to be a manifesto which is assigned to a specific candidate. The manifesto that is going is the manifesto and our program for the next 5 years from 2026 to 2031. The chairman of the FDC is Jack Sabiti, elected last year. That is now something obvious. Our friend, Ambassador Waso Birgwa's term ended the 6th of October last year, and he is no longer a member of, is no longer the chairman of the party. Now, from that group, there are a few exceptions that are still officials of the party. Elias Lukwago, for example, all the controversies notwithstanding, is still a member of the National Executive Committee and is listed as such on account of him being LC5 of Kampala City. So all the chairpersons, LC5, are members of it. Also the division and the city mayor are members of the National Executive Committee. They are listed there. And until it announces their membership of the party, they will remain as such. True to what a caller has said, these electoral reforms are Museveni's handiwork. In this country, and especially in the parliament, if there's something that Museveni doesn't want to go through, it will not go through. If there is anything, however hard it is, that he wants to push the throats of Ugandans, he is going to do that. And so, this is autocracy, really. And I think we should look through these reforms based on that. I agree with the who suggests that, Katonga should actually, Somalia should just, go ahead with their own plans and leave the FCC alone. I think that the day that our friends in Katonga staying claim over the leadership of the FCC is a day when, trust between us and them would have been fully resolved. And so what we have established as the FCC is a culture of not looking at individuals. Whether you are the biggest brand in the FCC, you are what kind of founder member, it belongs to the people of Uganda who subscribe to and have got aspirations in line with what the FDC aspires for. And so we have beaten strong man syndrome. We have surmounted the culture of people believing that because they have founded an organization, they have got an entitlement. They have a sense of entitlement. This is something that we have defeated, and people should praise us for that, because FDC now, than any other political organization in this country, is going to be run as a joint effort and not an effort of an individual or a big name. And in as far as entrenching reforms are concerned, it may be a bit difficult because, from time to time, some of those reforms, suppose, for example, we had entrenched term limits, the removal of limits, no term limits in our constitution. We would never have had the opportunity to even talk about an amendment. The people that are in government today would keep the fact that the provision is entrenched and therefore it should stay there, and it makes it very difficult for us to change the constitution when we need to. Our constitution is still young, and the way to make it even stronger is not there, and therefore the constitution will continue being a work in progress, and I think that would be the best for this country. Until such a time that we have democratically stabilized and constitutionally, we can now say, well, our constitution is stable, not prone to attacks by speakers. Before we reach that stage, I think it would be disadvantageous.
All right.
Even to think about entrenching articles in the Constitution.
I'm afraid with that we have to come to the end of this show. Thank you very much, Honorable Patrick Amuriat of Boy, for staying with us on the line. And we do hope to have you in the near future. And thank you very much, dear listeners, for not only listening in, but sharing with us your views about this topic. Well, we'll continue reflecting on the issues of constitutional and electoral reforms in the near future, getting more stakeholders to share their views on that particular matter. Up next, we have the news in English with Miss Josephine Tagano. Thereafter, we'll have the Soul Train with Baby Junior.